Spectrovision Radio.
Everybody, and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast. My guest this time is Seán Clancy, the Druid on Uisnigh, or An Drí Uisnigh. And Seán is a priest of Lugh. You are a tour guide on the hill, and you're going to be talking to us about Bealtaine tonight, and a really absolutely magnificent fairy encounter at the crossroads nearby. Now that just came up recently. We'd already just decided to talk about Bealtaine, and this has come up, so I'm really excited to hear about that too. But Seán, welcome.
Thanks, Joe. It's lovely to be here. A long time listener and watcher of the podcast, so delighted to sit down and chat finally.
Likewise, because I can't even remember how I came across your Instagram, but your storytelling is absolutely wonderful, and I've been sharing it with everybody, and I absolutely love it. Sometimes you're up there on the hill, and the sun's setting, and each time you're telling a story. You call it the Tuesday Tales now, which
Tuesday Tales, yeah. I've tried to do a live tale every Tuesday and pick a random piece of folklore or a random event or some ancient mythology. I'll generally ask people to give me something that's pulled from, or a ghost story. I love a good ghost story as well. And so it's practice for when I'm doing it in front of people, that I have a catalogue of tales. I can just crack them out and go. So that's how that kind of came about. But I'm also liable to, if I'm in a sacred site or I'm at a holy well, I'll pop on live, try and gauge the energy of the place. If I know the stories, I'll try to bring people in and engage them. It's effectively digital tour guiding, for better way of putting it. But I think it's abundant to have the catalogue of what these places are, not just what they are physically, but what they are spiritually. So many of these places are liminal gateways and portals, and so the people, when they go to visit them, they tread lightly and tread consciously. But also then, when you realize, why is that hare looking at me? Why is there a hare there? Why is that fox looking at me? That what we're looking at isn't always exactly what we think we're looking at. Just to try and trigger that in people's minds.
The other thing to mention is that you are studying Druidry at the moment, so all of what you're doing is kind of developing all of the time. You started out learning about the folklore of where you're living, which is around the Hill of Uisneach, and then
actually born here.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I'm like
right
absolutely. It's I'm conscious people throughout these family lineages thing, but I come from the family. My mother's family have lived along the same Boreen. The Boreen means a little road that I live on now for about 7 generations. And the family farm we're on about 400 years. We lost it during the famine and managed to get it back, and things like that. So we're a lifetime here, and we're kind of just at the tip of what would have been the ancient kingdom of Midge, one of the 5 great provinces of Ireland, which Uisnigh was the seat of. But at the same time, I'm only an hour away from Tara, which is the seat, the secondary seat of the High Kings. 45 minutes will have me at Rathconrath, which was the seat of the Kings of Connacht, which is where the Morrigan, the goddess of war and death, has her fit abode, the cave of Uisnigh. Definitely worth a visit if ever you're over. But so I'm kind of central in the sacred landscape, so it's very hard to escape it once you're tuned into it.
Can you talk to us about the relevance of Hill of Uisneach with Bealtaine, and also around Tara and the winter solstice?
Of course, yeah. Well, Tara and Uisnigh are sisters. The ancient Irish had actually said there were like 2 kidneys in the body, and to the Irish, who were very heavy drinkers, kidneys were nearly more important than the heart. So that was literally how it was written in the 6th century, that there were like 2 kidneys in the one body. But Uisnigh was the priority site originally, and it was where the Druids of the land were believed to have lived. Locally, they always said that the Welsh put their Druids in Anglesey to be as close to Uisnigh as possible. So I won't stir that pot too much, because I know the people will disagree. But what it is, it's a high plateau. Now, it's not very high. It's about 570 feet. But the rest of the landscape around is so flat that from there you can see 20 of the 32 counties of Ireland. You can see the whole way from Cooley Mountain, which is on the border with Northern Ireland, the whole way to the Galtee Mountains in County Cork. That's north-south.
Yeah.
Looking east, you can see the whole way to the Dublin Wicklow Mountains, and on a clear autumnal sunset, you can see Croagh this ancient sacred mountain way out in the west. So literally you're taking in a full landscape. And the folklore said that the Dagda, the good god of the Tuatha, the people, the bright and shining people that came before us, he had his palace on Uisnigh before all other kings, with the land stretched out equidistant around him. But it was known, if you visit it today, what you'll see is a series of ridges and humps and bumps and a couple of monuments and standing stones. But you really, when you tune into the energies, you suddenly realize that you walk in a sacred ceremonial landscape and royal landscape, seat of sacral and sacred power for, well, the archaeology goes back 5,000 years, but potentially a site of ritual since the end of the last ice age for about 10,000 years. So you can imagine 10,000 years ago, 11,000 years ago, Ireland was under a mile of ice, and then the ice melted and the people came back. And they're traveling just south of it. There's what you would call a ridgeway, but here we call them eskers. They're lines cut out from the landscape of the glaciers as they retreated. And just south of Uisnigh, there's a great esker called the Esker Riada. In Old Irish, it was known as the Slee Moor, or the Great Way, the Great Highway, one of the 5 great roads of Tara. So people traveling across the land, this was an ideal way to get across the flat land, which was boggy and full of trees. And they're passing this ancient talk or trackway. Suddenly they come across this high plateau, bang in the middle of the country, where they can gather about 80,000 people safely, where you can see 20 counties. But suddenly when they get there and they feel the energy of the land, because all the ley lines of the land across there, there's solar alignments with midwinter and midsummer there. They then tune into what's going on. So they bring their Druids and they bring their kings there, and the Druids go to live. Like we always say, at the same time, these people had been coming in little boats since the time they left the Ukrainian steppes. And they travel as far west and as far as east as they can go, and they come to Normandy and Brittany, and they see the islands of Britain out there, so the little boats go out. And then a couple of generations later, they populated Britain, and they see the islands out there in the west, so the islands go out and they find Ireland. And they're travelling around Ireland, and they find this plateau. And then when the feet get itchy again, the little boats go out, they don't come back. And they realise this is as far west as we can go, this is the land of the setting sun. So here, bang at the exact heart of this land, we put our wise men, our druids, our bards, those who know the knowledge of the land, the knowledge of the skies, those who can tell us, well, we're putting our culture and society together, how to do that. And the druids and the bards of the land stood on Uisnigh, and on the shortest day of the year, the morning of sunrise in midwinter, there's a hill about 17 kilometres southeast called Croagh Hill, which was believed to be where the goddess Bridget kept her sacred forge and sacred fires. And you're standing on the summit of Uisnigh, the rising sun on the winter solstice rises directly over Croagh Hill. There's a cairn on the summit. Sun comes up, hits the cairn, a beam goes up like a lightsaber, and the sun wheels out from behind the mountain. It's an incredible sight. A natural solar alignment. Like, I'm always conscious when we're there, there could be 4,000 or 5,000 people gathering at Newgrange, which is incredible. Newgrange is amazing. But it's a man-made miracle, and it's about 5,000 years younger than this. Whereas this, we could only be 4 or 5 of us there, and we're watching possibly the original solar alignment of the land.
Yeah.
And so they're watching the wheel of the year turn. And the archaeology, actually, it's 100 years ago this year since Uisnigh was excavated by McAllister and Prager. Mm-hmm. One of the first major archaeological excavations in Ireland, which is what I love, because the archaeology backs up the mythology and the folklore. They went in looking for a royal cemetery, whereas the folklore always says, no, this was a ceremonial site. It was a site of royalty and feasting and the great fire festival at Bealtaine. And the keeping of a perpetual flame. And they found at the centre of the royal palace this massive slab of wax and animal fat, the signs of keeping of a perpetual flame. And the folklore says that as the wheel of the year would turn for each of the fire festivals, which are critical to Ireland because the wheel of the year, we're lucky here in Ireland and Britain, but the wheel of the year aligns to our seasons pretty well. Mm-hmm. So the wheel turns, we come to Imbolc, or in Irish, Oimlik. So Imbolc means in the belly. So your cows are full of lamb. The cows are full of calf, your ewes are full of lamb, and the ewe's milk is coming. So you got past the worst. But now it's the time of hard work. Now you have to start tilling the soil, planting the seed. And so they take the fire from Uisnigh to Croagh Hill, to Bridget's sacred hill, now to herald the time of Bridget, because Imbolc is Bridget's time. Mm-hmm. And a fire will be lit on Croagh Hill. And so the farmers seeing Croagh Hill light up would know, okay, now we have to start tilling the soil, getting ready to plant the seed. And the wheel of the year would turn again. They'd come to the equinoxes and we'd line up perfectly. The chambers later were built in Lochcrew, and we've so many alignments to the equinoxes in Ireland, it's crazy. And now that's the time you plant your more delicate seeds, those that won't survive the frost. These days in Ireland, we have our national holiday at the spring equinox, St. Patrick's Day. And it kind of ties into that knowledge. Everyone says, oh, we don't celebrate in Ireland. We do. We celebrate harder than ever, but we don't know why. And then the wheel of the year turns again. And you come to the point we're at now, Bealtaine. And I have a lot of people come to me and says, no, it's Bealtaine. I'm never going to dismiss anyone else's traditions. Whatever you learned is fine. But here in Ireland, it's a living tradition. Bealtaine is literally our month of May. It is the Irish word for the month of May. And it all starts from Uisnigh. Because the fire that was lit to celebrate Bealtaine, to herald the time of Bealtaine, to tell the farmers, tell the nobles that this was Bealtaine, was lit on Uisnigh. And the law of the land at the time was every other fire in the land had to be quenched. And the ranking Druid or the High King would then take that perpetual flame up to the very summit of Uisnigh, where 20 counties of Ireland would be looking in.
Yeah.
And he would light this great beacon fire.
Oh.
And then the local tribes around would light their own hillsides, and then the whole landscape would take in. When I had the scout troops, we used to light some of the adjacent hills around Uisnigh. And when you're out there in the landscape, you'd struggle to pick Uisnigh out because it is not that high.
Right.
But when that fire goes up, there's no doubting it. There is the sacred centre. In fact, it was written in the 5th century that Eru's fire eye shines bright for Bealtaine Eve.
Oh.
Now, it was written in Latin, but that's the modern translation of it.
Yeah.
And so you see that great beacon fire go up and the secondary fire beside it, because there's always two. And then the hillsides in between you and there light up, and then you light your fire and you send it on, and it literally feels like that scene in The Lord of the Rings. So the beacon, send the beacon fires to Gondor, but then you realize that you're not part of a line of fire, you're a line of circles of fire taking in the whole land, and it's incredible. And the whole land pounces and joys, and when you're standing on Uisnigh, and the energy of the people celebrating the goddess, celebrating Eru, because that's what it's about.
Yeah.
We're lighting the fire now because Eru is at her most fertile. The hard work has been done. This is your signal. Come to Uisnigh. From this point, from the moment the fire is lit, there's a 2-week Éineach. Éineach is kind of a fair, a 2-week fair. And so this would be the time when tribes would gather. It was considered a time of amnesty, so you could travel beyond your own boundaries. Iron Age Ireland, very full of warfare, full of raiding. You would rarely leave your own tribal area. The tribe in the next kingdom might know you, but after that, they won't know you. So unless you're a Druid or somebody who's trading and well-known, you would rarely travel around. So to avoid inbreeding and things like that, festivals like Bealtaine were critical. So everyone would gather. It said that local folklore says that the High King, before lighting the fire, would send out an invite to each of the tribal kings. And we had 5 great provinces, 5 great kingdoms, but in that we had about 150 tribes. And the invite that was sent out was a little ring of red gold, mined from a mine above Blessington in County Wicklow, the personal mine of the High King. So you received your ring of red gold, said, okay, our tribe's in favour, we can go to Uisnigh. And you wait until you light your fire and then you travel. So I kind of imagine they probably have to leave people behind to light the fires, but because it is quite a journey up if you're in the bottom end of the country. But it meant you could travel, you could trade, you could negotiate, you could barter. Critically, you could find a wife or a husband, or you could find people to foster out your children, because that was a big thing in the culture of the time, was the fosterage of children, the sharing of knowledge, and also kept your tribe safe. They won't attack you if you've got their children. They won't, and vice versa. But it's interesting. It was a critical time for contracts, for the making and breaking of contracts. So when the kings would gather in the palace in Uisnigh, the palace in Uisnigh, it's a concentric ring fort, effectively a figure of 8. We have ring forts, for anyone who's not familiar with them, they are an Iron Age farmstead, effectively. We have about 60,000 of them in Ireland. With the largest late medieval landscape in Ireland. And the reason we have so many of them when they didn't survive in other countries is because in Ireland we call them fairy forts. So people are convinced they are liminal places and doorways into the world, so people did not mess with them. So we have thousands of them all across the land. But of the 60,000, only 6 are this concentric circle shape, the conjoined ring fort, or the R2D2 kind of effect. And those are the royal sites of Ireland. So in Ulster you had Owen Macha, in Connacht you had Rathconrath, Croagh Ali. In Munster, then you had the Rock of Cashel, you had Dunalia in Leinster, and then Royal Midja in the centre, the holding of the High King, had 2, seat of sacral power at Tara and seat of divine power at Uisnigh. So the High Kings, the kings of each province, and the tribal kings would gather in the palace in Uisnigh, and they would trade and they'd debate, they'd settle the laws, and they'd go out then and they would announce the laws to people outside, because they reckon potentially up to about 80 to 100,000 people would travel for this fair. So a huge proportion of the population would come to it because it was your chance to get out and about, to meet people and to make deals. And marriages were a big part of these contracts, were a critical part. And under our Brehon laws at the time, marriages could be for a year, typically a year and a day. So you went in and all negotiations were for a year and a day. But in for the year and a day, it was long enough to potentially parent a child, birth the child, and get the child to a point where it's, well, they had the tough first 3 months are done, and then you can go, how are we getting on? No, you're a bit petty, I'm done with you, no, or vice versa. And typically then you had agreed the terms and conditions before you went in. So coming out, then you took what was yours with you, and then you gained in between, you split up the middle, and the child would generally go with the mother. But it depended on the conditions going into the marriage, and then some marriages would last for lifetimes. So it depends on the conditions, but that was typical with all trades. And that's why even in modern Irish magic, the Bealtaine is a critical time for the making of bonds, for the making of relationships, and for the breaking of bonds, and the breaking of relationships, and thinking and looking at what serves you and what doesn't serve you, and how to adjust that. It's a very critical time just to see where you are and see where you need to be and see what you need to shed to get there or take on to get there. So sorry, I was getting ahead of where I was. So the Bealtaine fire, when that was lit, the people would come together, the kings would come together, the laws would come together, and when the High King was receiving all the guests, there's a processional route up the Hill of Uisneach. One of the archaeological features in Uisneach is a ceremonial trackway. We have a number of these around Ireland. We call them tokers, but this particular one was said, they called it the ancient trackway of the High King's Road, but it also had a geisha upon it. Geisha is a difficult thing to explain. It's kind of like a curse, but also maybe an obligation. So the tradition would be you could only use this roadway for the Bealtaine festival. Mm-hmm. It could only be used upon the Great Fair Bealtaine, and only with the invitation of the High King of Ireland. You had to have that ring of red gold with you. If anyone used it any other time for any other purpose, there was said to be this geisha was put upon them for 7 years and 7 generations. So it could be anything. A geisha could be anything. So something that you can't deny hospitality to a red-haired woman, or it could be that every second boy in your family will lose an arm or something. It depends on the druid that put on the geisha. But this was the story that. So even today, the farmhands, when they're crossing that trackway, it's there. It's an archaeological feature. And even when the farmhands are walking it, they will not walk up it. If they have to cross it, they'll cross it directly and then travel up the side. In 2017. We had the Duke on the hair. Is it back? Sorry.
Yeah, that's interesting. So they come at it from the side.
Come at it from the side always, every time.
Wow. Okay.
Even people who haven't been told this, they just instinctively don't walk up it, and it's very inviting. You come in, and it's right at the start of the car park for the current visitors. It's very inviting. You think, oh, I just walk straight up. But
exactly.
You just know you don't.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me.
The last time it was used, it was in 2017 when we had the President of Ireland, Michael T. Higgins, lighting the fire. So we thought, this is the closest thing we have to a High King. We've invited all these people here, so let's just chance our arm and see. So we lit it with ceremonial torches all the way up, and every guest that came to the fire festival that year travelled up the processional route. And it worked out very well. But we haven't had anyone of that rank since, so we haven't risked it since. But it was, I think it has to be right. It's such an ancient tradition. Like, the archaeological feature itself is about 2,000 years old, but the folklore behind it goes back much, much further. That there's so much else that goes with the Hill of Uisneach. That's just the Bealtaine features. And the thing is, Bealtaine itself, the name, the etymology of it, often people say things as Bealtaine, it goes with an ancient god called Bel, who some people believe is Balor in another aspect, but that's not really where our folklore takes it. Our folklore takes it basically off China is the Irish word for fire. And the fire is central to it. So it's either Bealtaine, which is the mouth of fire, which was Bealtaine, and the tradition there being that you lit 2 fires and you would pass your cattle between them, and anyone needed to cleanse between them. And because this was the time of year, this was effectively the start of summer, so the cattle were being brought down off the high ground and let out into summer pastures, which during the earlier months in the year would be quite soggy and hard for the cattle to manage. But the fires and the smoke would cleanse them, literally cleanse them of the evil demons, cleanse them of nasty spirits, but also burn off the winter hair and burn off the lice. It's practical, and in some countries in the Middle East they still do this. The other etymology might be Bealtaine, or which would now we'd say with Galtaine, which would be bright fire. So it'd be the brightness of the fire and the bringing in that energy of the sun, heralding the coming of the time of Lugh, like the fire at the start. The rising sun on the spring, on the winter solstice, would herald the coming of time of Bridget, and we'd celebrate that then with a fire on her hill. Now we're lighting this fire heading into Lugh's time, which then will end with Lugh Nasa, and a fire would be lit on the hill in Taltown, outside Navan in County Meath. And then, of course, the Samhain fire was lit at Clochta, which is another hill near Atboy, the Hill of Ward, it's called, and not quite a nice name, but that's another story for another day. The folklore behind Clochta is incredibly ancient and incredibly deep, and incredibly potent to the potential of women's history in Ireland and the righting of wronged women, which it's something that needs to be done. So anyway, that's where Uisneach ties into that aspect of the Bealtaine mythology. Aside from that, then, it was the seat of the High Kings, the home of the High Kings. Like every second, even up into the early medieval period when the O'Neill clan the sons of the Nile and the Nine Hostages came to power.
Mm-hmm.
They ruled from Uisnigh, and every second High King of Ireland from that in the O'Neill period either came from one of the four O'Neill clans, two of whom ruled the Kingdom of Midgeagh, the old province of Midgeagh, Clan Coleman and Clan Sláine, and two of whom ruled the Kingdom of Ulster. Those would be Clan Owen and Clan Connaught, from which we get Tyrone, Tyrone, and Tyrconnell, which is Irish for Donegal. So every second High King of Ireland was born in Uisnigh,
Right.
in the palace. But to be High King, it wasn't a simple thing of just claiming it. You had to be acknowledged by the other provincial kings at Bealtaine in the palace in Uisnigh. You then had to go to Tara to be crowned in sovereignty. There's a stone upon Tara. There's a picture over here, the Lia Foil, the Stone of Destiny, one of the four great treasures brought back to Ireland by the Tuatha De Danann. It said that the Lia Foil, we believe this to be the true Stone of Destiny, not the Stone of Scone. And we won't get into that. But it's believed that the Lia Foil would cry out in joy at the touch of the true High King. And then he would be crowned. But he wasn't High King yet. He had to go back to Uisnigh, because there's a second stone on Uisnigh, which is potentially the most critical and important aspect of the whole hill. It's called Island na Muireann, or the Stone of the Divisions, colloquially known as the cat stone, because it looks like a cat playing with a mouse.
Oh.
But what this stone marks is the resting place of the goddess Eru, the goddess that Ireland is named for. She's the one that negotiated the truce between our people, the Milesians, the Celts, and the bright and shining people of the goddess Danu, who were here beforehand. And in that deal, in that brokering, the land was to be named for her, and she was to be the goddess of the land. And Amergin, who made the deal, said, "Let this land be yours. May the fertile flesh of this land be your skin. May its rocks be your bones, and may its rivers be your blood." And when the Tuatha De Danann shed themselves of their mortal flesh and went into the other world, Eru took the place at the exact centre of the island, under this stone on Uisnigh. Now, it's a giant stone. It's about 32 tons. Glacial erratic dropped there by the last ice age. A geologist would tell you. When the folklore gets into it, a geologist will tell you it's a 32-ton glacial erratic. A folklorist will tell you it's Island na Muireann, the Stone of the Divisions, put there by Fintan the Ancient to mark the centre of Ireland and to mark the resting place of Eru. And it maps out the Kingdom of Ireland, because the stone splits almost in a map of Ireland from the south. But what it really is the seat of the divine feminine in Ireland. When you're going around that space, you're in the presence of the goddess. You're at the centre of the cosmology of land, sea, and sky. Like literally, for 6,000 years, people believe this stone marked the exact centre of Ireland. And during COVID, when everyone was locked down, our Ordnance Survey Department did a digital survey, did a full digital survey of the whole island, and found out they were only out by 6 kilometres.
Oh.
So for 6,000 years, they weren't that far out at all. But the aspect, the centre, I always kind of imagine that Triskelion shape. When you're standing in the centre of that circle there, you're standing at the centre of the Triskelion. You're standing in this world, the other world, and the high world. You're at the centre of land, sea, and sky. Yeah. The land is below you, but also the minerals within your body. The sky is above you, but also the breath in your lungs. The seas are around you, but also the air droplets and the blood blowing through you. So you're at the centre of the cosmology. And the tradition with these sites, as with all sacred sites in Ireland, is that you go round 3 times, Joshel, so it would be with the sun, paying tribute with your right hand. And the first time going around, you tell Eru what it is that you need to change in your life, what it is you need to get rid of. The second time going around, you tell her what it is that you want to bring in, what you want to gain. Mm-hmm. And the third time, most critically of all, you tell her what you're going to do to make it happen. Because there's no manna from heaven with the Irish gods. You have to do the work. Mm-hmm. They'll do everything they can to make it, to help you and bring it along, but you have to do the work. Which is why Bealtaine becomes so important to begin, because you've been doing the work since Imbolc. You've been tilling the soil, planting the seeds, delivering your calves and your lambs and your foals, and now you need a bit of luck. You need a bit of godly intervention to make sure you get through the summer, that there's enough rain to make the land fertile, but not too much rain as we get in Ireland. That there's enough sun to make the crops grow, but not too much sun that'll burn off your crops. That's out of your hands. And Bealtaine in Ireland, in modern folklore, it's a very critical time for protection magics and for working with the Sidhe and working against the Sidhe, so that nothing of this world or the other world is going to steal your wealth, steal your prosperity. It's tradition here that you give a bit. New Year's Day the same. You don't give anything away on Bealtaine. You do not give anything away. You don't. If somebody comes asking for a cup of sugar, you don't give it, because with that you're giving away your prosperity. Farmers on Bealtaine Eve will walk the boundaries of their lands, making sure there's no holes, making sure there's nothing escaping, but also making sure that that deceptive neighbour up the road hasn't deposited something, the fetus of a dead calf on your land. somebody hasn't buried an egg in your garden, a rotting egg, that's to both drive out your prosperity and for them to claim it. It goes back to modern folklore as well. You could steal somebody's prosperity by sipping the first drop of their milk before they do. So you milk your first cow in the morning, you should drink traditionally people would pour out the first drop for the she, not a Bealtaine. First drop on Bealtaine, you sip yourself. You don't give it to she, they get the second drop, and you definitely don't give it to a neighbour or anyone who comes looking. There's actually a great fairy story. There's two great fairy stories based off Uisnigh. There's a little village on one side of it. It's abandoned about 100 years ago. And but one version of this is there's a lady, she's milking her cow on Bealtaine morning, just as the sun's coming up. And this is set before the famine. Mm-hmm. And this incredibly well-dressed gentleman with a slightly green tinge to his face comes to the door and roars, looks at her and screams, "Banya!" which is Irish word for milk. "Banya!" And she looks at him and he's too well-dressed, but the story goes he's dressed from a bygone age. Mm-hmm. And she looks at him and panics. And she has just taken her first sip.
Okay.
So she doesn't mind giving him the little cup, the little crew bean. It's a little wooden cup, and he drinks it. And then dashes it against the rocks and said, "We have 2 wishes from that man." And he walks off down the hill, and she looks down, the mist follows him. Uisnigh's funny, there's 2 ways a mist will rise on the hill. The mist will come up from the ground, from the lower valley below, or the mist will roll down the hill from absolutely nowhere. And the mist that rolls down the hill is incredibly deceptive. You'll find yourself walking on a dead straight path that you've known all your life, and suddenly you don't know where you're going to. Or you'll know, like, you're by a landmark you've known, and you're walking back to where you think you should be, and an hour later you're still back where you started off. Traditional Irish fairy mist. Getting out of it, to say you take a piece of your clothing off, turn it inside out, or put your shoes in the wrong feet so that you're no longer perfect. It's supposed to confuse the sheep. So this woman then is sitting at her milking stool, and the mist is rolling down behind the man, and she's kind of panicking. So she takes her cardigan off, turns it inside out, stands up and blesses the cow so that the bad luck doesn't go with the cow, and comes out and goes up and tells her sister what's after happening. And says, "Well, you got 2 wishes out of it. What do you need?" "Sure, what do we need? We're both getting old. I suppose we could use a bit of a help around the house. And I don't know, we'd use a few chickens." Anyway, the next day, on an adjacent hill, there was a little village. And the landlord at the time wasn't as generous as the landlord up there on the Hill of Uisneach at the time. And he effectively evicted the whole village. Yeah. And one young man from the village came to the 2 sisters, knowing those 2 old women on the hill with a bit of a farm, and said, "Could you give me employment? Could you give me somewhere to stay?" So suddenly here was their help. And he brought his flock of sheep and his chickens. So suddenly her 2 simple wishes were granted from that.
Great.
Sorry, I went off on a complete tangent there, Joe.
I love it. This is why I tune in to you.
Oh, look. But that's kind of thing. Even today, like I was digging my garden. I have a very small vegetable garden here, but I was turning the sods on May Eve last year, and I find an egg buried in the garden.
No.
And straight away I'm thinking, what? And I go in straight away and question my kids. Like, I have 2 young kids. They were 7 and 5 at the time, so it wouldn't be unheard of. They do very random crap in the garden, but no. So I messaged a few people who I know, senior robot heads who would have a wisdom in dealing with this, and some other Irish pagans, and every single one of them was saying, "No, you need, but do your protection magics tonight." So how do you do your protection magics in Ireland for Bealtaine? Well, actually I have some of them here. Yellow flowers. I don't know if you can see those primroses. You scatter primroses on your boundaries, at your door, and at the gateways to your fields and your properties. Primroses are to curry the favour of the she. Mm-hmm. But also to keep out the things you don't want, you take branches of gorse, which is also yellow, but a very, very prickly individual. Mm-hmm. So that then keeps out the energies you don't want around. Mm-hmm. You'd also then typically go to the hawthorn tree, the may tree. And that's actually... Sorry, I'm going in circles, Joe, the whole time, but a lot of people give out and say, "How do you know when true Bealtaine is?" Because we're basing it off a current calendar. Like we say May Eve now, it's handy for the calendar's sake. But true astronomical Bealtaine is the midway point between the equinox and the solstice. I think it's the 6th of May this year. Sorry, I should have checked that out before we go.
Right, okay.
But that's the true astronomical date. And then, of course, we have our fire festival then the first Saturday after that, just for the convenience of it. So I'd be celebrating again then. So typically I'd be celebrating 3 times, but I'll do my protection magics twice. I'll do them on May Eve for those that follow that tradition, in case there's somebody in that aspect who's working against us. And I'll do it again on the astronomical date, just on the eve of the astronomical date, just for the older aspects, because you just don't know. And these kind of things you don't want to mess with. So typically then we'll leave the yellow flowers around and the boughs of yellow flowers around the door and the thresholds.
Them in your landscape, in your land, would you put them at each corner, or would you?
I generally put a blossom at the corners and at the gateways.
At the corners
and the gateways and under the cattle drinkers, where the cattle at the points where the cattle enter the river to get water, and at the drinkers, anywhere that there's a potential for the prosperity to be drained, I'll put them in the chicken coop. All these little kind of things. It's quite an arduous thing, but then the tradition is that you walk the boundaries of your land.
Yes.
So I will have a bushel of primrose flowers with me, and the primrose grows abundantly because we've native woodlands on our farm. So we've abundance of primrose, so I can pick them and place them as I need to. The gorse really don't want to be carrying about with you, so that's where you put at the critical area, the main farm entrances and at the doorway to the house. Said pieces of ash are very good as well for that, because ash was always the strength of the stick of strength for the Irish, the tree of strength. But then the hawthorn, like for the people to know when it was Bealtaine, your local fairy tree would blossom at true Bealtaine. Wow. So the fairy trees in Ireland, you're probably familiar with the concept, but they're believed to be liminal spaces. They're all hawthorn trees. A true fairy tree is a hawthorn tree with rocks growing around the bottom of it. And now not all hawthorn trees are fairy trees, but all fairy trees are hawthorn trees. The hawthorn, as you're familiar with, one of the 7 sacred trees of the ancient Druids. What you see above ground in the tree, in the branches and the trunk, is reflected below ground in the roots. In Ireland, it was called poor man's bread and butter because it was your salvation in the spring months, because there's a nutrition in the leaves, so it could keep you going. Yeah. When the flowers come, your local fairy tree would blossom at Bealtaine. That's how you knew it was true Bealtaine. But it had to be the fairy tree. The trees in the ditches didn't mind, but it was your local fairy tree. In fact, the tree on Uisnigh blossomed at exactly 3 p.m. The first blossoms opened at 3 p.m. on May 5th last year, which was astronomical to Bealtaine. Then the flower itself, when it comes, can be brewed in tea, which is incredibly healing for the heart. And when the haw comes, the fruit, it's deceptive. A tiny little red apple. The flesh of it, the flower is incredibly healing for the liver and the kidney. The haw itself, the flesh of the haw is incredibly healing for the heart. It's been proven to drive down cholesterol levels. And if you can gather them, anyone who has heart issues, and just gather the flesh of them, it's fantastic for your heart. But the seed at the center of that holds the source of arsenic. So for those in the know, it can give life and it can take it away. Yeah. The thorn is incredibly prickly and can create a form of poison as well. And if a prod from the hawthorn will take a long time to heal. Back in Ireland, it's tradition that we don't touch the fairy trees. You'll hear so many people who have come a cropper or have had bad luck after cutting down a fairy tree. But even the ones in the ditches, they always put up a fight. You won't meet an Irish farmer who's not covered in scars from having to tackle the hawthorn. Actually, sorry, I have a little mini fairy tree here with me. There's a company in Derry make these called Mini Inish.
No way.
It's a model of a fairy tree. The true fairy tree will always have stones around the bottom. And we don't know were the stones put there to protect the trees from the ploughs. It's most likely they were put there to protect the trees from the ploughs and the cattle. But some people believe that they just grew up through them. The hawthorn, of course, is effectively immortal. The trunk will live for 200 or 300 years, but when it falls, the core of the tree will grow back again. So it ties in liminally. But why they're called fairy trees is because we believe that when the two a day went into the other world, these trees were left as doorways. Because what you see above ground is reflected below ground. They exist in this world and that world. They can just walk through them. And Bealtaine, again, of course, is one of those, the 3 critical times of the year when the veil is thin. The veil of Manon and McLure shut between them and us so that we couldn't interfere with each other. But they seem to have a lot more access to passing through than we do. But Bealtaine would be one of the 3 critical ones were Bealtaine, Samhain, and Maeve. Everyone's familiar with Samhain and dressing up your kids so the fairies will baby's crying.
Yes.
Sorry.
Is that okay? But, are you okay to stay? Or
I'm okay, yeah. No, I'm okay. At least I should have him. He's probably just a bit louder than usual.
Of course, Bealtaine and Samhain are times of the year when the fairies were said to travel from one mound
exactly to another.
Next.
Yeah.
And what can you tell us about that? About how that would affect the kind of the local community?
People wouldn't leave. They wouldn't go out at night because you didn't know who you were going to meet, and if you did, you brought protections with you, or you brought a man of iron. You went travel with your blacksmith. Mm-hmm. And fair enough, everyone was familiar with Samhain because you were less likely to go out at Samhain anyway. It's dark. But this time of year, you wouldn't find yourself being overtaken by the dusk. And suddenly you're out in the bottom of a field and you're between 2 mounds. And as I said, fairy forts are everywhere now. 60,000 of them in this land. Mm-hmm. Not just the forts, the mounds and the hills. And effectively every single hill we have has a cairn or a cistern on it. So like we're interlaced with ley lines and sacred lines, and fairy roads. So there's so many stories of people out on May getting caught out, and suddenly they're coming in. There's a procession coming at them. It could be a jovial procession, it could be a funeral procession, or they get given some task they have to do, and you do it, and you're given a reward. And here's some money, here's some coins, or whatever, or here's some food. They never take the food. They always want our food, because I think it must be something about the nutrition in the other world. Our food seems to be incredibly nutritious to them, but their food is a way of locking us into their world, and it's not nutritious to us at all. So I would say anyone who finds themselves in the other world, drink nothing that you don't see coming from the soil, and take no food at all. But that's it. They love offerings. If you want to give them an offering, they love our produce. They love anything that's of the earth but worked by the hand of man. In fact, when I go back to the fairy trees, a lot of our fairy trees you'll see covered with these rags and ribbons. People call them rag trees or clotted trees. These are specific ones that are believed to have a cure. And tradition would be that you would take your offering, this thing that's of the earth but worked by the hand of man, which for people, for handiness sake, would probably have been a piece of their clothes. So linens or cottons, wool, perfect. Take a little ribbon, you whisper your wish to it, you breathe your illness into it, or you touch it off your wound, and you hung it on the tree. And tradition was that as that rotted away, so your wish would be granted, your wound healed, or your illness carried away. And this was fine when people were wearing organic clothes, but they're not. Everything's plastic and cotton now. In fact, the great fairy tree in Tara split in half during the pandemic from people hanging masks on it. So I'd say it's Irish people especially, because they used to go up and pulling these ribbons out of the hair, the little plastics, and hanging on the trees. And if you take nothing else, anything at all, but it has to be of the earth, worked with the hand of man. So take a piece of grass from the base of the tree. This is what my grandmother taught me. Go to the base of the tree, take a long piece of grass and weave a little ring. Or if you have a few people to pray for, or a few intentions to ask, take a few pieces, weave a little wreath, and then hang it on the tree. You couldn't ask for anything better. Of the earth, work with the hand of man, fully organic, zero carbon footprint. But Nana always said, be careful what finger you weave it around, because you don't want to be marrying yourself to a fairy tree. You want to make kind of equipment. So sorry, your joy, I went completely off on one there, but that's why people are more likely to get caught and stolen away at Bealtaine. Midsummer as well is it's a third liminal point. And an awful lot of our stories are people getting caught out of midsummer. The tradition here is that at midsummer we're supposed to leave the sacred spots, the hilltops and the sacred sites for the Sidhe to come. Specifically, Anya is the queen of the Sidhe for that period of the year, and she demands the access to the hilltops and the sacred sites. And it's bad luck to be out and about. In fact, you have your own tradition of Midsummer's Night Dream. That's the point, but people forget about it, because, like, again, Samhain, dark, you're not going anywhere. Bealtaine, you're conscious it's a liminal time, but midsummer overtakes people. The sun is too triumphant, and you forget that. Well, because it's midsummer here, it's actually midwinter in the other world for the Sidhe. So they come here to have their midwinter parties on our hilltops, which are warm and bright. They're avoiding the winter in the other world. And likewise, when we're doing our ceremonies on Uisnigh with midsummer, two things: we'll always tell everyone at the start and at the end, we're off the hilltop. As soon as the sun goes down, and the sun plays games with us on that night, it always just bounces in the sky for a couple of hours. It could be a good 45 minutes going down. But when it does, right, down, we'll have all the ceremonies down at the bottom of the hill. Always have a blacksmith with you. So Tom King, the Gawa of the Boyne Valley, is always there, which is a fantastic individual. He dresses up like a big Viking, always full of jolliness and joy, but he'll always stay on the summit with me till the very, very end. And then, because the summit is a bit away from Alnamuran, which is the main sacred side of the hill, there's always somebody who sneaks back down to do their own rituals on Alnamuran, but being conscious of how dangerous that night is to be out, we take short straws to see who has to go down and just make sure there's nobody around the site. And the last 3 years, there has been incidences for the guide that's gone back down. So 3 years ago was Justin. Now, Justin is a guide and he's an archaeologist. He's no way woo. He's respectful of the sites, but in not way woo. As he was approaching the stone, thousands of little white butterflies came out from under the stone. Wow. And I mean, there's never anything unusual there. And this was past dusk, but he said they were glowing. Thousands of them.
This is the most tricky, technological mess up that I have ever experienced.
I'm so sorry. No, it's my fault. I should have known better than to be telling some of those stories in this window of time.
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, I'm going to try and step away now and just give you the floor here, because you tell these stories just so well. Just
to try and set your landscape so we know where we're going into. There's a town in the centre of Ireland called Mullingar. It's nestled between two great lakes, Lough Oul and Lough Ennel. Now, Lough Ennel was a lake of the High Kings, of the O'Neill High Kings, Lough Ennel. It's an ancient sacred site. It's full of treasure. But leaving Mullingar heading west, there's three ancient roads. One heading towards the Hill of Uisneach, the sacred centre of Ireland. An ancient talk or an ancient roadway, but it's now called the R391, just because we give them very appropriate names, don't we? The second one was an ancient talker, the roadway from the Hill of Tara, seat of the High Kings, to Croaghan Alley, the seat of the Kings of Connacht, the roadway of Queen Maeve herself. Dead straight line, hilltop to hilltop to hilltop, crossing bog and a landscape. An ancient ceremonial route travelled by thousands. We now call it the R392. But just north of this again, another ancient roadway, leaving Mullingar and heading towards the villages of Ballinaccarragee, passing across Slane Moor, the great gathering point of those same O'Neill clans, great mustering height, high, level, fertile ground, covered in barrows. In fact, the brother of Niall and the Nine Hostages, the ancient king himself, is buried there, buried with 100 Munster men he'd taken as hostages. They were buried alive. But just through that ancient route, that was the way to Bree, which was, we now not call it Ardor Hill, but that was believed to be the home of the god Midger, from the great story of the wooing of Bealtaine. That road now, of course, is now called the R393 because we have to keep appropriate names for modern roads. This story happened about 6 weeks ago, so we'll say it happened at Patrick's Day and the 2 days leading up to Patrick's Day. So for anyone not from Ireland, this is March 15th through the 17th, 17th being St. Patrick's Day, so equivalent to the spring equinox. And the principal character in it, I'm going to call her the girl. If I say a name, just pretend I haven't said the name, and we'll just call her the girl. But the girl is the daughter of a work colleague of mine, and she's doing her leaving cert this year. So I thought when I told this originally, she was 17, 18. She's actually 18 going 19. And the leaving cert would be equivalent to your GCSEs. But here it's very heavily weighted on points. So your grades actually get you points, and the number of points you get will tell you what college places you get. So it's a very stressful year for younger people. But she's also a musician, and to raise a bit of money, she was working part-time in the bars. Their home is on the top of this ancient sacred hill, Slane Moor. And she was working in a bar in a nearby village. And of course, the weekend had been out to Patrick's Day. They were looking for every person they could get on board in these little bars. It's not a very busy town, but it's the only town for a few miles around. So at these kind of events and at the weekend, like a bank holiday weekend, it would get very busy. So she was inundated with work and bar work. And she's also a very, very talented musician. So every night from Friday night through to St. Patrick's night on the Monday night, she was guaranteed work, and she was guaranteed tips, and she was guaranteed to get money for playing music. So the girl was more than happy to take it and to work. So this story commences late on the Saturday night, March 15th. And she's just closed up the pub. She was the last one out, gathering up her tips, putting her banjo and her guitar and her amplifiers in the boot of her little car. And she was heading off along this road, the R393, heading home towards Slane Moor, this ancient sacred site. And as she's approaching, it's a difficult road to travel. There's stretches of it which are very dramatically straight and rise up and down over hills. But then there are also sections which are treacherously windy. So her initial approach in towards this incident is following a long series of bends. And she's getting tired. You know, those kind of nights you just don't want to be on the road. And she goes into the series of bends and comes out, and suddenly she's almost home. And she's approaching a crossroads known as Kenny Cross. She's getting up to the crossroads, and as you're approaching this crossroads, no matter what way you're coming at it, the verges have been cut right back. So it's a big, wide open expanse. It's one of these ancient dancing at the crossroads. And there's an awful lot to be talked about again about the magic of crossroads and the liminal spaces and the changes of directions and the old dark fella who might wait for you at the crossroads. But as the girl is approaching the crossroads, she sees a dark figure standing right in the middle of the road, right on the white line, bang in the middle of her road. And the figure seems to fan out in front of her, and she hits the brakes and screeches to a halt, because standing in the front of her on the road is a bird. So what, says you? That's not unusual. And it's not. And especially in Ireland and around that area, there's an abundance of wildlife. But this wasn't the normal bird to expect to see there. It wasn't like a heron or a swan. You think a bird in Westmeath. Swan is the symbol of Westmeath. This is where the children of Lur were turned into swans. This is where Angus and Keir met. There's so many of these swan. It's even the county symbol. But it wasn't. It was a peacock, a male peacock. And as the girl got closer and drew her car to a halt, the peacock stood right in the middle of the road. And she said he almost seemed to get bigger and fan out across the whole road. She thought this was unusual and blew the horn, but the peacock didn't budge. It just glared at her with these silvery eyes, and the feathers fanned out behind him. And she said it looked like 1,000 eyes looking back at her through his feathers. In Ireland, it's bad luck to bring peacock feathers into your house. They're said to be the unknown souls will be watching you through the eyes of a peacock feather. Though I think in some other traditions, it's good luck to bring them in. So she wouldn't have known this, but of course this was playing through my head as she told me the story. And so the peacock's standing bang in the middle of the road. Now, this was quite wet weather at the time, so really, if you look at this on Google Maps, think, why didn't she just go into the road and go around? She's in her yellow car. She didn't want to be stuck trying to go around this car. She went into the mud. So she just sits there and blows the horn at the peacock. It doesn't move. And she sticks her head out the window and shouts at the peacock. It doesn't move. So she gets a bit frustrated now. She's tired. She's exhausted. She's sore. She stands up, opens the door and stands but 2 feet out to get out of the car and looks around, and the peacock's gone. She's looking into the trail of the headlights and the crossroads all around her. She's suddenly very conscious of how dark it is, how quiet it is, and this peacock is gone. So she's assuming that the opening of the door, she's scared it away. So she kind of breathes a sigh of relief, just sits back down, pulls in the door, buckles up her seatbelt, looks up, and the peacock's right there again, right in her face. Well, on the far side of the windscreen. She screams, puts the car into a hard reverse, and drives home and goes the long way around to a village called Rathconrath and Rathone, which adds about 10 miles to her journey. And she's tired and exhausted. She gets home and her mother's sitting up and she tells her the story. She says, well, that's weird. And a peacock. Her mother is a very soft soul, a lovely woman. Says, and was it okay? You didn't hurt it. Her straight away thinking about the animal as opposed to her daughter. You didn't hurt it. You didn't scare it. No, mommy, it didn't hurt it. It just terrified the life out of me. So it didn't pass much heed. They thought this was weird, a peacock, but it's not impossible for somebody locally to have a peacock. It's not expected, but it's not impossible for people to have a peacock. Like, we know certain landed gentry around the areas would have kept peacocks in times past, and there's a peacock's grave in a nearby local estate, but it doesn't know of anyone locally at the current time keeping a peacock. It's not, I can't imagine it's a very easy pet to keep. Anyway, the girl doesn't pass much heed. She's tired. She has her studies to do. She's just after finishing exams and she's in the middle of a very, very busy weekend. So Sunday night, again, busy night in the little pub, the only pub in the village there. She's working, near the nearby village. She's working hard. She's waiting tables. She's playing a bit of music. She'll be pulling the pints when the barman goes off to do his whatever. And she'll go back and play a bit of music and people start throwing money at her and asking for songs. She's a brilliant songwriter herself, so she'll ask for her own songs as well. And so she was having a very good night professionally, but she was exhausted. And she, again, throws her gear into the boot of the car and gets in and heads off and doesn't think twice about the previous night's experience until she's hitting the dark bends and coming up towards Kenny Cross. And as she's approaching the crossroads again, here's the bird standing in the middle of the road. And this time he seems bigger. Maybe it's just because she was so terrified by what happened the night before. He seemed bigger, so she rolls the car to a halt again and stops and waits and looks out and shouts and blows the horn at it and it doesn't move. Now, up to this point, she hadn't really looked around at the general area. Like, this is a very rural crossroads. Like, there's a handful of houses along one of the roads going south from there, but they're 200 or 300 meters down. There's nothing at the crossroads itself. And she's suddenly conscious of a figure approaching along the northern arm of the crossroads. And the figure seems to be hugging the ditch, almost as if it's using the ditch as a handrail. Like, she never steps out into the moonlight. It's like she's just conscious of this approaching figure. She's conscious that it's female, that's quite old, it's quite wizened. She's conscious of a reddish hue to the hair and almost a greeny complexion to the clothing and the skin. The girl's line was, she looked like a Mayo jersey made human. That's the GAA jersey of County Mayo. It's green. It's very bright and green, very bright green and red. And I pushed her to describe her face to me. Said, well, this just really triggered me. She said, as she got closer, she seemed to get no bigger. She seemed to be the same height when she was 100 yards away as she was when she was 5 yards away. She seemed to not increase in size or scale. The hair was wispy and wild, and this glare to her, and the eyes looked wild, and the teeth were wild. The teeth were she said the teeth terrified her. And I said, well, what about her clothing? She said, well, her clothing all looked natural. It looked knitted, but almost like it had been knitted from the landscape, almost a bit knitted from the briars of the trees around her. It's like, the girl is a songwriter. You can see it in the way she described it. It was very poetic. But this automatically kind of triggers thoughts of the other side, that this person, and the girl said she felt the uneasy feeling, that chill, that kind of that kind of seemed to travel ahead of the woman. She didn't feel it was anyway welcoming. There was no threat to it, but it was no way welcoming. The girl has rolled down her window and shouts out to the old lady, "Ma'am, excuse me, this is your peacock. Could you move it off the road?" And she said the woman kind of looked at her with a very unsettling look, and almost when she's laughing at her with her eyes, and the woman shouts out, Kaiserbon, Awalia, which in Irish means, well, Kaiserbon effectively means white Caesar, but it's also the word for dandelion. So dandelion, home, which I think is a great name for a peacock, to be fair. Now, the girl doesn't speak very good Irish, but she had written this down when she got home just to make sure it stayed in her mind because it was all so weird. But the peacock trotted off and followed the woman back up the street. And the woman looked back and shouted at her, "Girl, thank you." She said she had a very raspy, very earthy voice. "Girl, thank you. If you see him again, tell me where he's getting out. We've fenced everywhere, but he's getting out, passing through these doorways." And the girl didn't think about the word doorways before, and actually neither did I, that just come back to me there. So she heads on home and gets home, tells her mammy this, and the mammy thinks it's very weird again. So again, the pair of them sit down and say, actually write this out because something's going on. Anyway, come to St. Patrick's night the following day, and this has been a long day. The pub's opened early. The village had a parade, so everyone was in the village. It was busy. It was arduous. She was playing a lot of music, but she was very tired at this stage, and then she was the last one out again because she was the youngest person working in the pub. So of course they left her to tidy up and clean up and lock up. And she's loaded up her banjo and her guitar and her ramps and all her sheets of music. And it's lashing rain because it's Patrick's Day in Ireland, so of course it's lashing rain. But as she hits those bad bends and slows down, the rain has stopped and there's a mist rising up. And the mist seems to be enveloping the whole area. But as she's approaching Kenny Cross, and just beyond Kenny Cross, the eastern arm of it is rising up Slane Moor, the hill she grew up on, the hill she spent all her life on, the hill where her home is. And she's looking at the verges and looking at the crossroads, and there's no sign of the birds, thinking, "Oh, thank God, I can keep going on." She's just watching her headlights head on up the hill, and suddenly she's conscious of a figure coming out through the ditch, through the hedge, through a very dense hawthorn hedge, and here suddenly she sees the peacock heading for the middle of the road, and she floors it, thinking, "I'm going to get through the middle of the road." But no matter how fast she went, the peacock would still have got there first. So she hits a point where she just has to hit the brakes, and she slams on the brakes in the mist and the rain, and her car skids slowly up and stops again, just in front of the peacock. And he's looking huge. But again, the third night she said he looked bigger than ever, and the two silvery eyes glaring at him, and the thousands of eyes and the feathers seem to be winking at her the whole way through. And she's just tired and exhausted and so freaked out by this. So she's looking up the road, kind of hoping to see the woman and hoping not to see the woman. So she rolls down a window and shouts, Ma'am, are you there, ma'am? Your peacock's out." And again, she said she could see the figure kind of coming down the roadway, hugging the hedge line as she was going, not exposing itself out at all. And the woman came right up to the guard, he said, at the time, and the girl was very freaked. And the woman took out a little cup of those bird feed out of her shawl and shook it and said, Kaiserbon, a while. And again, the bird shuffled off behind her. The little old woman then turned and looked at the girl, and she said, "Well, thank you now, girl. This is 3 nights you've saved my bird. Well, you haven't killed my bird, so that's a service you've done me. Tell me, did you see where he got out?" And the girl looked at her and pointed kind of over to the ditch over there where the thick hawthorn hedge was and said, "It doesn't look like it, ma'am, but he came out through those hawthorn trees over there." The woman looked at her and said, "The one with the stones around it. The hawthorn tree with the stones around it." And the girl said, "Yes." The woman looked at her and said, "That's the doorway. We'll have to fence that one off. Now, girl, you've done me a great service. Will you take some payment for it?" And the girl said, "No, ma'am, I'm okay." "No, girl, roll down the window. Here, step out to me. Did you get out of the car earlier?" I said, "Well, I stepped out once to try and shoot the bird first day." "Oh, you did? You stood up to my Kaiserbon. You're a brave girl, aren't you? Will you step out to me now and I'll give you a bit of payment?" The girl said, "No, ma'am, I'm too tired. My back is sore. We're working all day." The little old woman kind of grinned at her. I said, "Will you take a payment, so?" And she said, "No, I can't. And the little old woman's almost getting aggressive, and the girl's getting terrified now of this woman forgetting about the bird. "Take a payment. You've done me a service. I'm not going to be in your debt." The girl says, "Well, okay, ma'am. You're not in my debt, but if it settles your mind, I'll take it." "Okay, girl. Give me your wallet there, and I'll drop some coins into it." And the girl looked at her and said, "I don't have a wallet." "Your purse, then?" I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't have a purse." Can you, if I give you my Revolut, can you Revolut it to me?" Of course, this the way things are. And the woman looked at her and said, don't want anything with what this revolution. What are you on about? And the girl tries to explain about internet banking and phones and how tapping, and the woman is just looking at her like she's seven heads. And the girl said the sneer in the face is no longer friendly and much more sinister. The woman looks at her, have you anything? The girl says, oh, I have a couple of tissues here from the bar. I have tea towels. And the woman says, what are they made of? The girl says, I think they're cotton. Grand. Roll down the window there and I'll give you some coins in your tea towel. So the girl holds the tea towel to the window and the woman drops 3 golden coins in. Now the girl looks at them as they're falling in, doesn't get a good look, but she sees they're golden, so she assumes it's €3 because the euro is silver with a golden outsert. So you think that's okay, €3. The girl says, thank you, ma'am, you didn't have to do that, but I do appreciate it. And the woman says, your duty is done and I owe you nothing now, but thank you again. And she shuffles off and the girl rolls up the window and, trying not to speed off impolitely, but get out of there as quickly as she can, she heads on home. And her mammy's waiting up for her. Now she's very late this night, and the mammy's waiting up, and she tells her what's happened. So they get out the little red and white tea towel. When I told this on my Instagram, I had the actual tea towel with me, and they open it up, and there's 3 gold coins, but they're not €3 that the girl was expecting. These are old coins, and they're quite chunky and heavy. The girl said even if she lifted the tea towel, there was a bit of weight to it, a bit of heft. So the mother thought this was amazing. And so they, again, made notes of everything that had happened and went to bed, put the tea towel up. They have a little statue of Holy Mary by the window and the Child of Brag. And she thought, I'm just going to put it between the statue of Holy Mary and the Child of Brag and leave it in the windowsill where the sunrise will catch it in the morning. And then they came back in the morning in the cold light of day and went and opened the tea towel, and what had been 3 gold coins were 3 little dandelion heads laid out perfectly flat, little yellow circles of gold. But that's what the payment was from the Kaiser Bond. She got paid with 3 dandelions for each day that she let the dandelion live. Anyway, that's the story. I had the actual dandelions, and the day I told it in my garden, I nearly lost them.
I saw that.
Yeah, just like, and the panic, oh God, what is it going to? Yeah, so that's the kind of thoughts. There's something about the yellow flowers this time of year as well, but that goes back to the tradition of the gorse and the primrose, but yeah,
yes,
the cowslips, yeah.
I mean, amazing. Thank you so much for telling that. And I do apologize for the technical difficulties that we've had. You've got the crossroads, which of course is always liminal.
Yeah, always.
And in Irish folklore, of course, people are met at the crossroads. It is a space that you will meet otherworldly beings.
Yeah, and again, where deals are done. And there's a reason in Ireland we used to have major feshes and dances at the crossroads. The reason we buried our vampires at the crossroads. And the crossing of feet and the passing of feet and the passing of life across somewhere like that is critical in the balance between this world and the other world. So sorry, Joe, I've rambled so much on this.
No, you've been absolutely wonderful. Thinking about the girl, I'm just aware that she's leaving. She's doing her leaving cert.
Yes.
She's leaving the job, and about kind of the transitions going on in her life. And I'm also with the fact that she's a musician.
Yes.
And musicians and artists, creative people are often called
and often pulled. And that's why I didn't say it to her, I haven't said it to her mother, but I'm very glad she did not get out of the car.
Yeah.
And the one time she did, she got straight back in. So something about being inside an iron box could have been the salvation there.
It's a really wonderful story. I did actually find a story about a peacock on Duchess.
Okay.
There is one in Galway, which I can read to you very quickly because
it's fantastic. It's such a fantastic resource. Like, you could lose a lifetime, and it's amazing.
Oh, I know.
As a storyteller, like it's a lifesaver.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, what a brilliant resource. So this, as I say, it was Galway. Did I put the location? Cullinane, County Galway. So there was once a fairy peacock which was roaming about Cullinane. It generally came up in the twilight of the evening, but also every evening it killed a horse and a cow. The dog in each house used to smell it coming, and they used to go and hide and shiver, and by this the people knew it was coming. The people of the village grew nervous and told the priest, and he decided to banish it, but he could not do this alone. He asked 2 other priests to come with him, and the 3 went out together at twilight, and they met the peacock coming into the village. So again, on the road, meeting the peacock on the road. They made the sign of the cross on themselves and on it and walked on, and the peacock followed them until it walked in and got drowned and was never seen again.
Wow.
So I'm guessing it
It's yes. I never actually thought to check Turkish, but I suppose it's so recent. I haven't really. It's still settling in,
this is
and
it.
I'm half expecting more to come from it as well.
Yeah,
Like
did you
it's
say like some other people had said that they had
yes,
also seen a peacock on the
yeah.
road?
Since I posted that, a few people have said they've come across a peacock on the road, including a local beekeeper who's a very good friend of mine. And she said they've frequently seen the peacocks along the road there.
Really?
So it could like realistically it could you always try to find the mundane in the magic, but it could realistically have been somebody has a peacock and she's a very weird old woman who just has a peacock. But it doesn't feel like that.
It doesn't feel like that. And
No.
the way that, I think you described her clothes as if they were kind of knitted from the foliage.
Yeah.
And,
And
even if it is a real peacock, the fact that it's kind of wandering around, it may have this, um, you know, the good people could be related to it, like that that
it
that it's
could be
like
a
maybe a
section.
real peacock, but it could have, a
It could be a carrier, yeah.
fairy
Yeah.
carrier. Yeah.
I love even the story you told of the sense of the malevolence. Well,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
within that, and then there's a sense of threat within it for some reason.
that's right. Yeah.
Like I don't know, it's
Coming in
fascinating.
and throwing its weight around, which it
Very much so,
felt
yeah,
like it did
yeah.
the road for that young woman. So I'd say, I mean, with the dandelions as well, that's often, that's it grants wish, it's related to wishes and fortune and, the peacock, that kind of symbolism, that's about the sort of rejuvenation and you know, yeah, I guess fortune as well. So
Yes.
I think that I would say, and being given the coins, and of course the symbolism of three turning up in that story again and again,
Yeah.
and the peacock turning up three times,
She Night Snow
and
and
the
the
three
three.
coins. It's so it feels like a really um, you know kind of a wishing of prosperity for that young woman, and particularly maybe with her music. I don't know what she's going off to study,
She's
but
hopefully music. That's her intention in the
well,
University of Minnesota. So it's
I think
yeah.
she's going to be, a fantastic musician and and one to watch. And
I've asked some other what they've done with the three dandelion flowers after I very very carefully gave them back to her the next morning,
yeah,
and they're currently sitting between under a bowl of water from St. Bridget's Well in Uisnigh, just to make sure there's nothing carried through. But she plans to have them laminated, and she wants to carry them with her to her exams. So
oh,
that's yeah, just
that is beautiful. Aren't dandelions related to to Goddess Bridget?
they are as well. Yeah, there's one of the first spring flowers as well. So and yeah, that's why she kind of thought like she rang me straight away the next morning, and I said that sounds very look just go to Bridget as well and get some water and just keep it around you just for the moment because Bridget will guard you and not always guard young women. So it's
Good advice.
pretty
Yeah.
and the Bridget Well of Uisnigh was actually a sanctuary for women. There's two ancient churches there as well. One was called Chapel Bridge and the other was a refuge for women that Bridget kept there.
Mm.
And so that's the goddess Bridget. Well, originally a well to the goddess. The well itself is 6,000 years old. It's incredible, and it was a temple to the goddess Bridget before it became a church of the Saint Bridget. But of course, the goddess Bridget was the daughter of Dagda, who lived in Uisnigh. They had that solar alignment between Dagda's home in Uisnigh, Bridget's sacred hill on Crohan Hill, and that's actually is one of those. There's three ley lines crossing Uisnigh. That's one of them. We call it the Bridget line here locally, but that goes the whole way from Uisnigh to Fitterboard the Morrigan, crosses Uisnigh, crosses Crohan Hill, just misses the fire temple at Kildare, just misses the ancient capital of Leinster, Dunanya, crosses a stone circle called the Athgraney Stone Circle, and actually ends on Glastonbury Tor.
Oh my goodness me.
So it's fascinating. Like it's just yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing what you can do with Google Earth these days. Just flat out ley lines.
Exactly. I've
Yeah,
done it myself of where I was born, and yeah, it is.
yeah.
It's really interesting. Well, listen, thank you so much. I don't want to
Oh,
keep
thank you
you
so
any
much.
longer because I know you're going to head off now to Instagram and do your Tuesday talk, and it's really late, and I've kept you.
It's grand. No worries. You've inspired me, and again, I'm such an admirer of your work for so long. It's just an absolute honor to chat to you, and so hopefully we'll do it in person sometime soon.
Yeah, let's do that. And likewise, thank you
Grand.
very much for everything you're doing. And yeah, I look forward to tuning in, and seeing also how this story develops too. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I'd urge people subscribe to. Can you pronounce your handle for people to find?
It's Drí _Uisnigh on Instagram. I have a Facebook, but I don't do it. It's mainly just to keep in contact with Facebook, with university friends. So you'll really just get me through Instagram. So it's DRI _UISNIGH, Drí _Uisnigh. And though you'll often find me through the Hill of Uisneach accounts as well, because I do a lot of the spiritual tours up there. So it's balances out.
Well, and that's right. If people are going over to
exactly, with the Fire Festival now in 2 weeks' time, you get 5,000 people coming to celebrate the goddess, to celebrate the land, to celebrate ourselves. And when that fire is lit, oh my word, the energy, the power, the potency, it's just, there are no words. It's just, you have to be there. Sometimes it's calm. It is incredible.
I'll make it there one day. My good friend Adrian, who's also been a guest on the show, he's going to be there. You're going to.
Yes, I met him very briefly last year. I was kind of in awe, because he's one of these characters through Oba that you're, oh my wow, it's Adrian. But he was such a gentle, humble soul, and his friend JJ, the pair of them were such mischief makers. Unbelievable. You wouldn't expect it. Yeah,
two of them together. Yeah, that's right.
Absolute rogues, but fantastic. Yes. Absolutely wonderful souls. But yeah, no, hopefully I'll see them. I know that when they're over, they're going to be quite busy because they're traveling with Emer, but I know it's going to be, hopefully I get time to actually chat to them. It's a very busy day for me as well, because I'm doing the historical tour of the hill in the morning as well, and then doing some ritual in the evening. So it'll be fun. It'll be
a long day, but yeah, you'll be spurred on by the excitement and the vibe of what's going on there. We'll speak to you again soon. Maybe at midsummer you can come and tell us again about the Hill of Uisneach and what you'll be doing around that time. So have a great evening, and
thank you so much, Jo, and you too. And yeah, chat soon. Have a great evening.
Thanks so much for listening and watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider joining us on Patreon for dozens more episodes of unreleased bonus content, monthly online events, and a private chat. We are a warm, supportive community, and it really helps to support the project. Find us on patreon.com/The Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast.
Spectre Vision Radio.